The Magic Library, A Journey Beyond Pages. Sarah walked slowly down Main Street, her shoulders hunched against the autumn wind. It was her third week in this small town of Oak Ridge, and loneliness followed her like a shadow. The move from Chicago had been her parents' decision, not hers. She missed the busy streets, the familiar faces of her friends, and the comfort of knowing exactly where she belonged. "What can I possibly do here?" she thought, looking around at the quiet shops with their quaint displays. Everything closed by 8 p.m., and the most exciting event was apparently the monthly farmers' market. The gray clouds above matched her mood perfectly. Sarah was about to turn back toward home when something caught her eye. A small building with a bright blue door that seemed to glow against the dull surroundings. A wooden sign above it read, "Oak Ridge Library, all worlds welcome." "That's strange," Sarah murmured to herself. "I could have sworn that building wasn't there yesterday." But perhaps she simply hadn't noticed it before. "Well, at least I can find a book to pass the time," she said to herself, adjusting her backpack and heading toward the blue door. A small bell jingled softly as she entered. Inside, the library was surprisingly spacious and warm. The scent of old books and cinnamon filled the air. Bookshelves reached from the polished wooden floor all the way to the ceiling, creating a maze of literary treasures. Soft golden light came from antique lamps placed strategically throughout the room. An elderly woman with silver hair tied in an elegant bun sat at an oak desk. She wore round glasses that magnified her bright blue eyes, and a purple cardigan with embroidered stars. When she looked up and saw Sarah, her face brightened with a welcoming smile. "Hello, dear. First time visiting our little library?" the librarian asked, her voice gentle but clear. "Yes, I just moved to Oak Ridge a few weeks ago," Sarah replied, surprised at how comfortable she felt talking to this stranger. "Well, welcome to our town. I'm Mrs. Parker, the head librarian. Actually, the only librarian," she added with a light laugh. "What brings you in today? Looking for anything specific?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I'm not sure. Something to help with boredom, I guess. I used to read adventure stories back home." Mrs. Parker's eyes twinkled. "Adventure, you say? I believe I have exactly what you need." She stood up with surprising agility for someone who appeared to be in her 70s. "Follow me if you would." Sarah followed Mrs. Parker through the main room, past sections labeled History, Science, and Poetry. They turned down a narrow corridor lined with even more books, some so old their titles had faded completely. At the end of the corridor was a small wooden door, barely 5 feet tall. It was painted the same bright blue as the library's entrance, with a brass doorknob shaped like an open book. "This is our special collection," Mrs. Parker explained, producing an ornate key from her cardigan pocket. "Not everyone finds their way to this room. It seems to reveal itself only to those who truly need what it contains." Sarah raised an eyebrow, unsure if the librarian was being serious or just adding some mystery for fun. Either way, she was intrigued. Mrs. Parker unlocked the door, which opened with a soft creak. Inside was a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to resemble a night sky, complete with twinkling stars that somehow seemed to move. A single round window let in natural light, and beneath it stood one bookshelf, curved to match the wall. Unlike the crowded shelves in the main library, this one held perhaps 30 books, each one different in size and color. "These are special books," Mrs. Parker explained, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. "They're particularly well suited for newcomers to Oak Ridge. Each one offers something different, depending on what the reader needs most." Sarah approached the shelf slowly, drawn to the colorful spines. Some books were bound in leather, others in cloth or materials she couldn't identify. One book in particular caught her eye. It had a cover that seemed to be made of gold, with silver stars embedded in the surface. As she looked at it, the stars appeared to twinkle, just like those on the ceiling. Can I read this one?" she asked, pointing to the golden book. Mrs. Parker's smile widened. "Excellent choice. That one hasn't chosen a reader in quite some time." Before Sarah could question the odd phrasing, the librarian continued, "Make yourself comfortable. That armchair by the window should do nicely." Sarah settled into the plush velvet armchair, which was surprisingly comfortable, as if it had been designed specifically for her. She placed her backpack on the floor and carefully opened the golden book. The first page contained only a title in elegant script, "The Door Between Worlds." There was no author listed. Sarah turned to the first chapter and began to read. Once upon a time, there was a girl who moved to a new town. She felt out of place and alone, as if she had been uprooted from fertile soil and planted in strange earth. Sarah's heart beat faster. The story was about a girl just like her. As she continued reading, the words on the page seemed to shift and move, becoming clearer and then blurring again, as if they were breathing. The room around her grew dimmer, and the light from the window intensified, focusing on the pages like a spotlight. The sensation of sitting in the chair began to fade. Sarah felt lighter, as if she were floating. The words on the page grew larger, surrounding her, until she felt herself falling forward into them. Suddenly, Sarah wasn't in the library anymore. She was standing in a forest unlike any she had ever seen. The trees towered hundreds of feet into the air, their trunks wider than cars. Their leaves were silver on one side and deep blue on the other, shimmering as they moved in a gentle breeze. The sky above was a rich purple color, with 2 small moons visible despite it being daytime. A path of glowing white stones stretched before her, winding between the massive trees. "Hello, Mrs. Parker," Sarah called out, her voice sounding different in this strange place, more resonant somehow. No one answered. Then she understood. She was inside the story. The realization should have terrified her, but instead, she felt an unexpected thrill of excitement. A rustling sound came from a nearby bush with leaves shaped like stars. Sarah took a cautious step back as the bush shook more vigorously. Then a small fox emerged, but not like any fox she had seen before. Its fur was a deep sapphire blue, and its eyes were golden, with vertical pupils like a cat's. Around its neck was a small silver pendant. The fox sat on its haunches and tilted its head, studying Sarah with obvious intelligence. "You're the new visitor, I presume?" the fox asked, its mouth moving naturally with the words. Sarah gasped, taking another step back. "You can talk." The fox made a sound that resembled laughter. "Of course I can. All animals talk in the realm of Everwood. Did they not tell you that before sending you through? No one sent me. I was reading a book in the library and then I was here, Sarah explained, still trying to process the fact that she was having a conversation with a blue fox. Ah, you came through the golden tome. That explains it. The fox stood and gave what appeared to be a small bow. I am Finian, but you may call me Finn. I serve as a guide to visitors from the other side. I'm Sarah, she replied automatically. Where exactly am I, Finn? As I said, this is the realm of Everwood, a world that exists parallel to yours, connected through certain objects of power like your golden tome. I've been waiting for a new visitor. It's been quite some time since the last one. Why was I brought here? Sarah asked. Finn's whiskers twitched in what might have been a smile. The book doesn't bring just anyone, Sarah. It chooses those who need what Everwood has to offer. From what I can sense about you, you're feeling lost, disconnected, like you don't belong anywhere. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. How could this creature know exactly how she felt? That's why you're here, Finn continued. To find what you've lost, even if you didn't know it was missing. And what's that? Sarah asked quietly. That's for you to discover. I'm just the guide. Finn stood and stretched. But I can tell you this. To find your way home, you must complete 3 tasks. First, we need to find the crystal cave and retrieve the echo stone. Then we must solve the riddle of the Moon Sisters. Finally, we must present both to the Queen of the Everwood. And if I don't complete these tasks, Finn's expression grew serious. Then you may be trapped here forever between stories, between worlds, never fully belonging to either. Sarah felt a chill despite the pleasant temperature. This was no longer just an interesting diversion from her boring new life. There were real stakes now. How long do I have? She asked. Until the second moon rises to meet the first. About 1 day in your world's time. Sarah took a deep breath. Then we should get started. Finn nodded approvingly. Follow me and stay on the path. The Everwood can be dangerous for those who wander. They walked together down the glowing stone path. As they traveled, Sarah noticed more wonders around them. Birds with rainbow feathers and long flowing tails soared between the trees. Flowers that looked like tiny lanterns grew alongside the path, emitting soft light in various colors. In the distance, she could hear what sounded like singing, though in no language she recognized. This place is beautiful, Sarah said after they had walked in silence for some time. It's your imagination that makes it so beautiful, Finn replied. The Everwood appears differently to each visitor, shaped by their inner world. What you see reflects what's inside you. Inside me. But I've been feeling so gray lately. Perhaps on the surface. But deeper down, there must be wonder and beauty waiting to be rediscovered. Finn paused, looking up at her. Moving to a new place is like starting a new chapter in your own story. It can be frightening, but it also offers possibilities that weren't there before. As they walked, Sarah considered Finn's words. She had been so focused on what she'd lost in the move that she hadn't considered what she might find. The path gradually sloped upward, leading them to higher ground. They crested a hill, and Sarah gasped at the view that spread before them. A vast valley stretched into the distance, filled with the giant trees. A river of what looked like liquid silver wound through the valley, and in the center stood a mountain of dark blue stone, with an opening that glowed with multicolored light. "The Crystal Cave," Finn announced. "Our first destination." As they descended toward the cave, Sarah noticed movement in the trees around them. Shadows flitted between trunks, too quick to clearly see. "Finn," she whispered, "we're being watched." "Yes," the fox replied calmly. "The Whisper Sprites. They're curious about you. New visitors are rare." "Are they dangerous?" "Not usually, but they're tricksters. Stay close and don't follow if they call your name." They reached the base of the mountain and stood before the cave entrance. The opening was shaped like an archway, with strange symbols carved around the edges. From inside came a soft humming sound and the rainbow light they had seen from afar. "The Echo Stone is inside," Finn explained. "It's said to capture the essence of your true voice, the one that speaks from your heart, not just your lips." "How will I know which stone it is?" Sarah asked. "You'll know. It will call to you." Finn sat down outside the entrance. "I cannot enter with you. Each visitor must face the cave alone." Sarah looked at the dark entrance, then back at Finn. "Will you be here when I come out?" "Of course. I am your guide until your journey ends." The fox's golden eyes were reassuring. "Trust yourself, Sarah. The book chose you for a reason." Taking another deep breath, Sarah stepped into the crystal cave. The humming grew louder, resolving into what sounded like distant voices singing in harmony. The walls were lined with crystals of every color imaginable, each emitting its own light, creating the rainbow glow she had seen from outside. As she ventured deeper, the passage narrowed, then opened into a large chamber. In the center stood a single pedestal of white stone. Atop it rested dozens of small crystals, each unique in color and shape. "Find the Echo Stone," she murmured to herself. "But which one?" As if in response to her question, the humming changed, becoming more focused. One crystal, a deep blue one shaped like a teardrop, began to pulse with light in rhythm with the humming. Sarah approached slowly. When she stood before the pedestal, she noticed that the pulsing of the crystal matched her heartbeat. Somehow, she knew this was the Echo Stone. She reached out and picked it up. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, it grew warm, and the humming transformed into a clear voice. Her own voice, but stronger and more confident than she had ever heard herself sound. "You are more than where you live or who you know," the voice said. "You carry your true self with you always." Tears sprang unexpectedly to Sarah's eyes. The words resonated with something deep inside her, something she had forgotten in the stress and sadness of moving. With the Echo Stone clutched carefully in her hand, Sarah made her way back through the passage to the cave entrance. Finn was waiting just as promised. "You found it," the fox said, sounding pleased but not surprised. "It spoke to me," Sarah said, still emotional from the experience. "The Echo Stone reflects your inner truth." "What did it tell you?" Sarah repeated the message, and Finn nodded sagely. "A powerful truth indeed. Keep the stone safe. We'll need it for the queen. What's next? Sarah asked, feeling more confident than before. The riddle of the Moon Sisters. And for that, we must travel to the Silver River. As they made their way down to the valley floor, Sarah noticed the sky was changing. The purple was deepening, and one of the moons was rising higher. We must hurry, Finn said, noticing her gaze. When both moons align, the pathway between worlds will close until the next visitor is chosen. They quickened their pace, following the path as it wound toward the gleaming river. When they reached its banks, Sarah saw that it wasn't water at all, but something more like flowing quicksilver, shimmering and opaque. In the middle of the river stood two identical stones, each shaped like a crescent moon. They rose about 3 feet above the silver surface. The Moon Sisters, Finn explained. To pass their test, you must answer their riddle. But be warned, you only get one chance. Answer incorrectly, and the way forward will be blocked. How do I even reach them? Sarah asked, looking at the strange flowing silver that separated her from the stones. As if in answer, a path of stepping stones appeared, breaking the surface of the silver liquid. The sisters have invited you to approach, Finn said. I'll wait here. This challenge, too, you must face alone. Sarah carefully made her way across the stepping stones until she stood between the two crescent moon rocks. Up close, she could see that they had faces carved into them, serene, identical women's faces with closed eyes. Suddenly, the eyes on both stones opened. They were made of some glittering mineral that caught the light. In perfect unison, the Moon Sisters spoke, their voices like chimes in the wind. We are two sisters, born together, yet always apart. One cannot exist without the other, yet we can never touch. We create and destroy in equal measure. What are we? Sarah thought carefully. The riddle seemed simple at first, but she sensed there was depth to it. Two sisters who can never touch, who create and destroy. She thought about her own life, about the changes she had experienced, about endings and beginnings. You are endings and beginnings, she answered finally. Every ending creates a beginning, and every beginning comes from an ending. They exist together but can never be the same moment. The Moon Sisters' eyes glowed brighter, and their stone lips curved into identical smiles. Wisdom from the young, they said together. Pass forward, truth speaker, and take our gift. Between the two crescents, a small silver object appeared, floating in the air. Sarah reached out and took it. It was a small key, shaped like a waning moon. The moon key, the sisters said. It opens the path to what was and what could be. Their eyes closed once more, and they returned to being simple stone crescents. Sarah made her way back across the stepping stones to where Finn waited. The moon key, Finn said, looking at the silver object in her hand. Well done, Sarah. Few visitors answer correctly on their first attempt. What does it open? She asked. The door to the Queen's realm. Our final destination. Finn looked up at the sky. And we must hurry. The second moon is rising quickly. Indeed, the smaller of the two moons was climbing the sky, approaching its larger companion. They raced along the path, which now led away from the river and toward a grove of trees with silver bark and leaves that glowed with soft blue light. In the center of the grove stood what appeared to be a freestanding door, ornate, made of dark wood with silver inlays, but attached to no wall or structure. "The Queen's door," Finn said as they approached. "Use the moon key." Sarah inserted the silver key into a crescent-shaped keyhole. It turned smoothly, and the door swung open silently. Beyond was not the other side of the grove as she had expected, but a grand hall with walls that seemed to be made of living trees, their branches forming a cathedral-like ceiling above. At the far end, seated on a throne of intertwined roots and flowers, was a woman of extraordinary beauty. Her skin glowed with a soft light, and her hair flowed around her like water, changing color subtly as it moved. Her eyes, when they fixed on Sarah, were ancient and wise. "Approach, visitor," the Queen said, her voice like music. Sarah walked forward, Finn padding silently beside her. When they reached the throne, Finn bowed deeply, and Sarah, feeling it was appropriate, curtsied. "You have brought the Echo Stone and passed the test of the Moon Sisters," the Queen observed. "Impressive for one so young." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Sarah replied. "And now you wish to return to your world?" "Yes, please. Though, this place is amazing." The Queen smiled. "Everwood exists in the space between imagination and reality, young Sarah. It is a reflection of possibilities. Those who visit us take something of Everwood back with them, just as they leave something of themselves behind." "What will I take back?" Sarah asked. "Understanding, courage, the knowledge that change, while frightening, carries within it the seeds of growth." The Queen leaned forward. "May I see the Echo Stone?" Sarah held out the blue crystal. The Queen didn't take it, but instead passed her hand over it. The stone glowed brightly. "Your true voice is strong, Sarah. Remember to listen to it, even when others cannot hear." The Queen sat back. "And now the moon key." Sarah presented the silver key. This time the Queen did take it, closing her hand around it. When she opened her palm again, the key had transformed into a small silver pendant in the shape of a book. "Wear this," the Queen said, handing it back. "It will remind you that every day is a page in your own story, and you hold the pen." Sarah put the pendant around her neck. It felt warm against her skin. "It is time," the Queen said, looking up. Through the branches of the ceiling, Sarah could see that the two moons were almost aligned. "To return, you must simply close your eyes and remember who you are and where you belong." "But that's what I've been struggling with," Sarah admitted. "I don't feel like I belong anywhere right now." The Queen's smile was gentle. "Belonging is not always about place, young one. Sometimes it's about purpose. Close your eyes. Think of what awaits you, what stories you have yet to live." Sarah closed her eyes. She thought about her new home, which she had resented so much. She thought about unexplored streets, people she hadn't met, possibilities she hadn't considered. "Every ending is a beginning," she whispered, remembering the Moon Sisters' riddle. She felt a warm breeze against her face, carrying the scent of old books and cinnamon. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. "Farewell, Sarah," she heard Finn's voice say, growing distant. "Remember us." When Sarah opened her eyes, she was back in the armchair in the special collection room of the Oakridge Library. The golden book lay closed on her lap. Through the round window, she could see that evening had fallen. "Did you enjoy your little adventure?" Mrs. Parker asked, appearing beside her chair as if she had been there all along. Sarah's hand flew to her neck, where she found, to her astonishment, the silver book pendant. "It was real," she whispered. "The best stories always are in their own way," Mrs. Parker said with a knowing smile. "They change us, don't they?" "How did you know what would happen?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Parker adjusted her star-embroidered cardigan. "Let's just say I've been the librarian here for a very, very long time. The special collection has helped many newcomers to Oak Ridge find their way. Can I come back to read more books from this room?" "Of course, dear. The library is open every day, and the special collection reveals itself to those who need it." Mrs. Parker's eyes twinkled. "Though each book can only be read once by any visitor. That's the rule." Sarah carefully placed the golden book back on the shelf, noticing as she did that the stars on its cover twinkled at her, as if saying goodbye. As she walked home through the darkening streets of Oak Ridge, Sarah felt different. The small town around her no longer seemed like a prison of boredom. Instead, it looked like a book she hadn't read yet, full of stories waiting to be discovered. She touched the silver pendant at her neck and smiled. Tomorrow she would explore her new hometown with fresh eyes. She would look for its magic, its stories, its possibilities. After all, every new chapter begins with a single word.